In the heart of a city once gilded with promise, the night shimmered with anticipation. Beneath chandeliers and velvet drapes, guests gathered, their laughter echoing through marble halls. The air was thick with secrets and the scent of expensive perfume. Every eye was drawn to the grand staircase, where the host would soon appear, bearing words that would linger long after the music faded. Crystal glasses clinked, and the orchestra played a waltz that seemed to slow time itself. Old friends reunited, new alliances formed, and beneath the surface a current of uncertainty pulsed. In the golden glow, faces were masks, smiling, poised, betraying nothing of the stories that brought them here. The ruins outside were forgotten, if only for a moment, as hope flickered within these walls. The host emerged, every step measured, every gesture deliberate. A hush fell, anticipation tightening like a drawn bow. Tonight, words would matter more than ever before. Glasses were raised, eyes glistened with unshed tears and unspoken dreams. The toast began, a tapestry of memory and longing, woven for all to hear. Each word rang out, clear and true, echoing through the hall and into the hearts of those assembled. The past and future collided in that fragile, fleeting moment. Some smiled, others wept. All were changed. The toast was not just a tribute, but a promise, a vow to remember, to rebuild, to rise from the ruins. The orchestra swelled, and the room exhaled as one. The toast lingered in the air, a spark in the darkness, a beacon for what might come next. Outside, the city's scars glimmered beneath the moonlight, but inside, hope was rekindled. The guests danced, their shadows entwined, their spirits momentarily unburdened. In corners and alcoves, whispered conversations blossomed. Old wounds were soothed, new dreams dared to take root, all beneath the watchful gaze of history. The night deepened, and laughter mingled with the strains of a final song. The toast had become legend, a story to be retold as the world outside slowly healed. As candles flickered low, the guests lingered, reluctant to let go of the magic. In their hearts the words of the toast echoed, a reminder of resilience and grace. The host, now alone, gazed out at the city's broken skyline. A single glass remained, raised in silent tribute to all that was lost, and all that could still be found. Dawn crept in, painting the ruins with gentle light. The echoes of the toast lingered, a promise carried on the morning breeze. The party was over, but something new had begun. In the ruins, hope stirred, awakened by the words that had bound them all together. The guests departed, each carrying a fragment of the night's magic. The city, battered but unbroken, awaited its next chapter. In the silence that followed, the memory of the toast endured, a beacon for those who would return and for those who never left. The ruins stood witness, silent and steadfast, as the world outside slowly spun on. Within, the spirit of the gathering remained, unbroken and eternal. And so the toast heard round the ruins became legend, a story whispered in the halls of memory, a spark of hope in the darkest of nights. In every ending there is a beginning, in every ruin the seed of renewal. The night was over, but its promise would endure. The city would rise again, shaped by the courage and hope of those who dared to gather, to remember, and to dream. And as the sun climbed higher, the ruins glowed with new possibility. The toast and the night it defined would never be forgotten. In the end, it was not the grandeur or the sorrow that endured, but the simple act of raising a glass together in defiance of despair. This was the toast heard round the ruins, a moment of unity, a spark of hope, a promise to begin again. And so, the story lives on, echoing through time as the city and its people rise from the ashes, forever changed by one unforgettable night.
The drive home was a tunnel of blurred streetlights and suffocating electric silence. David didn't speak, didn't dare. He hunched over the wheel, radiating a miasma of fear and guilt so thick I could taste it, copper and bile. I stared straight ahead, unseeing, the road dissolving into a kaleidoscope of the past. Not a war, but a slow, insidious poisoning administered drop by drop over decades. Alara, a year my junior, possessed a beauty that was sharp, demanding attention like a blade. Mine was softer, quieter, easily overlooked in the glare she cultivated. She learned early the alchemy of turning charm into shrapnel, tears into tactical weapons. Our parents, weary souls perhaps dazzled or simply cowed by her tempests, defaulted to appeasement. "Be nice to your sister, Clara. You know how sensitive she is. Let Alara have the window seat. She gets carsick." She never did. "Don't make a fuss, Clara. It's just a dress." The one I'd saved for months to buy, now stained with accidental grape juice. The golden child wasn't me. It was her. Not earned through merit, but extracted through the exhausting, relentless force of her need. She demanded the spotlight, and my parents, fearing the fallout of her tantrums, handed it over on a platter. My straight-A report cards garnered a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before the focus shifted to Alara scraping a C in math. "Oh, sweetheart, you tried so hard. Let's get ice cream." My quiet diligence in piano practice was background noise. Her loud, off-key singing during my recital was indulged. She learned the fundamental truth. She could take and take and take because the cost of her displeasure was deemed too high. The jealousy was never overt. It was the serpent sliding through the grass, the way her eyes would linger with unnerving intensity on a new necklace I wore, the subtle barbed comments disguised as sisterly concern. "Are you sure about that haircut, Clara? It makes your face look wide." The uncanny way the boy I'd shyly confided I liked would suddenly be whispering secrets to her at a party. Small thefts, a favorite scarf, a diary entry shared as gossip, tiny betrayals accumulating like sediment, building a foundation of resentment I'd been too blind, too conditioned to interpret as malice. It was just how Alara was. David entered the picture during a rare lull in Alara's storm, some dramatic, short-lived entanglement with a guitarist who smelled of stale beer and broken promises. David was warm, steady, solid earth after quicksand. He saw me, or so I'd believed, with the desperate faith of the perpetually overlooked. I mistook his quiet admiration for profound understanding, his easygoing nature for unshakable loyalty. When he proposed under the gnarled old oak in my parents' backyard, the dappled sunlight catching the ring, I felt a surge of vindication so pure it bordered on euphoria. I'd won something truly mine, something Alara couldn't touch, couldn't tarnish. I was the ultimate credulous fool. We'd been trying for a baby for 2 agonizing years. Hope, once bright and fluttery, had slowly curdled into a quiet, persistent dread that soured every month. The tests, the invasive appointments, the hormonal cocktails that turned my emotions into a storm surge, it had worn us down, or worn me down. David became distant, perpetually preoccupied. I attributed it to shared disappointment, the silent grief we both carried. I poured my own anguish into planning this cursed family dinner, a pathetic pantomime of normalcy, a desperate grasp at the life we were supposed to have. The final crushing blow came last month, David's test results, azoospermia, 0 sperm count. The urologist's words were sterile, final. We'd clung to each other in that sterile beige office, weeping for the shared future that had just evaporated. That shared devastation now felt like the most grotesque, intimate lie. He'd known. He'd known it was biologically impossible for him to father a child, even as he climbed into my sister's bed. The betrayal wasn't just sexual. It was a fundamental desecration of every tear shed, every whispered fear in the dark, every shared moment of despair. He'd held me while I mourned a phantom child, all the while planting the seeds of a fraudulent dynasty with her. The sterile, echoing silence of our apartment pressed in as David finally broke. "Clara, please, listen to me. It was a mistake. One terrible, drunken mistake, months ago. She came on to me. She was so upset, crying. She said you were cold, distant, that you didn't understand me anymore, that you only cared about the baby." His voice cracked, tears streaming down his face in a performance worthy of Alara herself. The raw terror in his eyes almost lent it credibility. Almost. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, my back to him, watching the indifferent city lights flicker. The icy control held, a frozen sea over a volcanic core. "A mistake repeated often enough becomes a choice, David. How long?" My voice was flat, devoid of inflection, the calm at the eye of the hurricane. He hesitated, the silence screaming. A few months." The admission was a whisper, heavy with shame. Months. While I injected hormones that made my skin crawl and my spirit weep. While I lay on cold examination tables, dignity sacrificed on the altar of hope. While I held him, shaking, after the diagnosis, believing our devastation was a shared burden, a sacred sorrow. The nausea surged, acrid and violent. I swallowed it down, hard. "And the baby?" I turned, finally meeting his eyes. There was no anger in my gaze, only a terrible, hollow curiosity, dissecting a specimen. "Her grand announcement, your miraculous child?" He flinched bodily, as if struck. I don't know. She told me she was pregnant, swore it was mine. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. She threatened to tell you if I didn't play along." His voice rose in pitch, tinged with hysteria. The sheer breathtaking cowardice was almost impressive. So you let her detonate it? At my mother's table, surrounded by the people who were supposed to be my refuge? A sliver of the earlier white-hot fury pierced the ice. You are weak, David. Pathetically, unforgivably weak, and she— A cold, mirthless smile touched my lips, devoid of warmth. She overplayed her hand, spectacularly. Congratulations, you both win the prize for most creatively self-destructive. My phone, discarded on the sleek glass coffee table, began to vibrate. Then it didn't stop. Texts flooded the screen, a waterfall of notifications. Calls rang out, persistent, not condemnation, not pleas for understanding, fierce, unwavering, furious support. My mother, voice thick with tears and a rage I'd never heard directed at Alara. Clara, baby, oh God, baby, I'm so sorry, so deeply sorry. I had no idea. None. That girl, she's poisoned, twisted. What can I do? Tell me, anything. My best friend Sarah texted, holy fucking shit, queen. That was the most brutal, beautiful, icy cold takedown I've ever witnessed. Epic. Legendary. Packing my car. Be there in 20 with top-shelf tequila and industrial-strength trash bags. We're burning every fucking trace of him. My cousin Mark. Just saw Alara trying to slink out. Aunt Carol blocked the door, told her not to come back until she's had a long, hard look in the mirror and found a shred of decency. Dad's already changing the locks. We've got your back, see, always. My usually stoic father, his voice gravelly with suppressed emotion. Clara, come home whenever you want, for as long as you want. Your room is yours. We love you. We're ashamed. Ashamed we didn't see it. Ashamed of her. The validation wasn't warm comfort. It was a tourniquet applied with brutal efficiency to a hemorrhaging wound. No one questioned my cruelty at the table. No one whispered I'd been too harsh. They saw the nuclear device Alara had launched, understood the precision-guided detonator I'd used in self-defense. The world hadn't tilted towards her golden aura, as she'd always expected it would. It had righted itself, brutally and decisively, crushing her beneath its weight. Sarah arrived, true to her word, wielding a bottle of añejo tequila like a weapon and hefting a roll of heavy-duty contractor bags. Words were superfluous. She poured 2 generous shots, handed me one, locked eyes in a moment of fierce solidarity, and then turned towards the walk-in closet. The sound that followed was pure catharsis, the violent zip of garment bags, the sharp scrape of hangers ripped from the rail, the heavy thump of expensive suits and casual wear hitting the bottom of the black plastic abyss. I sat on the edge of the bed David and I had shared, the tequila a fire trail down my throat. I wasn't crying for him. The love I'd believed in had evaporated the instant Alara's triumphant grin met David's terrified guilt. It felt like a chemical reaction, leaving only inert residue. I wasn't even crying for Alara, though the betrayal by my own flesh and blood was a wound that would fester, deep and ugly, for years. A foundational betrayal that rewrote my entire history. The tears, when they finally came, were hot, silent, and entirely unexpected. They tracked paths through the icy control, dripping onto the silk duvet cover I'd chosen with such hope. They weren't for the betrayers, they were for the ghost, for her, the Clara who believed fiercely in the sanctity of sisterhood, who thought shared blood was an unbreakable shield. The girl who trusted with her whole, open heart, who saw potential for good even in Alara's sharp edges. The woman who poured her soul into building a life, brick by naive brick, on foundations she now realized were built over quicksand. The woman who planned futures based on whispered promises and familial loyalty. The grief isn't just for the betrayal, I thought, watching Sarah toss a hideous cashmere sweater David cherished into the void with satisfying force. It's for the person you were before the scales fell from your eyes. For all the time wasted trusting the untrustworthy, loving the unlovable, building sandcastles against the tide. For the naivety that feels like monumental stupidity in the harsh light of hindsight. I grieved for the countless hours spent soothing Alara's manufactured dramas, time I could have spent building my own strength, my own dreams. I grieved for the emotional energy poured into placating David's moods, navigating his silences. Energy I could have invested in my career, my art, my own unvarnished joy. I grieved for the blind faith that allowed this beautiful, intricate ruin to be constructed around me while I smiled, mistaking it for a palace. My gaze fell on a framed wedding photo on the nightstand. We looked radiant, hopeful, blissfully ignorant. The girl in that picture was a stranger, sweet, fragile, utterly oblivious. I didn't hate her. I mourned her. I mourned the violent death of that trusting, open heart. The future she envisioned was ash. but staring at her smiling face, lost in a love story that was already rotting at the core, I realized something vital, a revelation rising from the ashes. She deserved better. I deserved better. The tears weren't weakness. They were the baptism of a harder, clearer, infinitely more resilient self. They were the ghost passing, making room. The fallout was swift, brutal, and satisfyingly public, but I was insulated within the unexpected, fierce fortress built by my family and friends. Elara, exposed as a calculating liar and a betrayer of the deepest, most primal cut, became radioactive. The pregnancy, its dubious paternity, now the delicious gossip of the town, became her own grotesque albatross. David slunk away like a beaten dog, his reputation and feeble excuses dissolving into dust. He tried calling once. I listened to half a second of his choked, "Clara, please," before blocking the number, deleting the voicemail unplayed. His voice belonged to the ghost. The divorce papers were filed with surgical precision by Sarah's recommended lawyer, a sleek barracuda in a Prada suit. I took what was fairly mine. The apartment sold, proceeds split, though I fought for and won the solid oak dining table, a grim trophy commemorating where the old life ended. David didn't contest much. His shame was too profound, his fear of dragging the sordid details further into the light too paralyzing. I didn't retreat to my parents' house. The ghosts there were too loud, the memories too entangled with the golden child's shadow. Instead, I leased a small sun-drenched loft downtown. High ceilings, exposed brick, walls bare except for one large abstract canvas in furious shades of red and black. Sparsely furnished, airy, uncompromisingly mine. The silence here wasn't oppressive, it was spacious. A blank canvas. The hardest part wasn't the lingering anger or the deep sadness. It was the echoing quiet of the absence, the meticulously planned future erased, the gaping hole where unquestioning family loyalty used to reside. But in that profound quiet, something else took root. Clarity. Hard-won, diamond bright. A cold, hard certainty forming under immense pressure. I saw the patterns now, the toxic dynamics I'd been blind to. I saw my own complicity in my silencing. Never again. One crisp, crystalline winter morning, 3 months after the dinner that ended one life and began another, I stood on the balcony of my new loft, wrapped in a thick, raw wool blanket. The city air was sharp, clean, scoured by a recent snow that dusted the rooftops like powdered sugar. It burned my lungs, a bracing, honest pain. It felt real, undiluted. My phone buzzed on the reclaimed wood table inside. An email notification. Subject: Application status. Starling International Residency Program, Paris. I'd applied on a defiant tequila-fueled whim weeks after the implosion, a middle finger to the ruins, a prestigious 6-month writing residency in a garret overlooking the Seine. Something the old Clara would have talked herself out of instantly. Too expensive, too impractical. David wouldn't like being alone that long. What about the baby we were trying for? The ghost's excuses. I walked inside, the cold air clinging to me. I opened the email. Dear Miss Thorne, we are delighted to inform you that your application for the Starling International Residency Program has been successful. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. Not the brittle, defiant smirk from the dinner table. Not the ghost's hopeful beam. This was different. Lighter. Truer. Rooted in the bedrock of who I was becoming. Clara Thorne. My name reclaimed. My territory marked. Elara's jealousy had been a corrosive acid, but it sprang from her own fathomless emptiness. Her attempt to annihilate me had, in the most brutal way imaginable, shattered the gilded cage. She could keep the shards of the life she stole, the lies, the inevitable, humiliating paternity reckoning. She could have David, the hollow man, the coward. They deserved each other's poisoned embrace. I lifted my face to the weak winter sun, breathing in the clean, cold air deep into my lungs. The grief for the girl I was would always be a quiet, melancholic hum in the background, a familiar scar. But the woman standing here now, forged in the crucible of betrayal and sharpened by glacial clarity, she wasn't broken. She was forged. The path ahead was uncharted, strewn with the wreckage of the past. But it was mine alone to walk. No ghosts, no golden shadows, no hollow anchors. Paris awaited, not as an escape but as a beginning. A life built not on blind trust or familial obligation, but on the hard-won, unshakable knowledge of my own strength, my own voice, my own worth. The silence in the loft wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with the resonant promise of my own unfettered footsteps echoing on the bare wood floors. I turned back towards the open balcony door, the winter air rushing in like a promise of renewal. Time to pack, time to breathe, time to begin.